4 days, 1 shed, hundreds of entries, all competing for the glory of the golden gnome and 10,000 Robux. This was the Easter GnomeJam 2022. And now, it's time for the results. Hello my fellow gnomes, what an incredible game jam we've just had. It was one of our biggest ever contests with over 300 entries being received. And not only have we seen a massive increase in quantity from previous gnome jams, but also a big step up in quality. Overall, I was really impressed with the huge variety and depth of skill on show in this game jam, and it's really a testament to you guys as developers, so a pat on the back to you all. It really is fantastic to see the talent we now have in this community of gnomes, and I look forward to seeing what you all go on to make in the future. But without further ado, let's have a look at some of this GnomeJam's entries. Now of course, with our event taking place during Easter, it was no surprise to see an endless supply of Easter themed entries, and I think by now I've certainly lost count of the amount of egg hunts I played through, slightly losing some of my mental capacity in the process. I've now done egg hunts with sheds, villains, quests, vehicles, just about everything under the sun you can name. Now it's certainly a challenge to get your egg hunt to stand out, but one good way is to have a solid storyline or quest to go with it. And I think a good example of this came from Henry and Friends with his game, The Adventures of Lost Eggs. The Earth has been struck with a comet, and the Easter Bunny has tasked us with finding the eggs which have been scattered all around the world. So there's this pretty cool cutscene that sort of opens and gives the story to explain the game to us, and then we even find ourselves able to choose the sort of shed we want to spawn in with. Could this be the world's first shed customization screen? Perhaps. It's very cool. Once we get into the game, there's a few quick quests here and there, races to win, crops to harvest, and although I can't mention this game without mentioning the infuriating 10 minutes I spent trying to find just 5 planks that were scattered around the map. Where was the final piece that I spent so long desperately looking for? Well, it was on the main path. Of course, with all these bells and whistles, sometimes with egg hunts, simplicity instead can be key. And for this reason, I really appreciated this small game from Barcina 1089. The whole level is packed into a really small area, so probably less than 50 stud square, but it's really nicely put together. And despite its small size, the eggs are pretty well hidden and take a good bit of searching in order to find. And just like egg hunts, I couldn't make this video without mentioning tower defenses. Now, owing to my recent series, there's been plenty of wave defense type games that were submitted to me, but one of my favourites that was based on my tutorial was probably Beware the Cabbage Goblins from Blabbermouth 667875567. I'm not quite sure about their UI design here, with these massive borders they had that sort of filled the screen, limiting you to a slightly smaller viewport to see things through. But other than that side, I really like how the game does look. The game had a good thumbnail, which always helps, and the towers are really well designed, they each have their own distinctive look. And the game does have this interesting mechanic where you then go and use your computer in the shed to buy your towers. Nice job here. Now of course there's always multiple ways of making any defense type game, and I quite enjoyed this Plants vs Zombies inspired entry from Polar Penguin 878 with Gnomes vs Goblins. It actually seems to be based around the template I provided of the cabbage goblins and the customized shed, which is pretty cool to see. So you've got the cabbage collectors, which earn your money, a sharpshooter to pick out targets, and another unit to stand firm against the advancing hordes. Although some of these units do look a little bit familiar. This one seems to bear a striking resemblance to Argo, our Discord server monitor, and this one looks rather like Kugi, a previous GnomeJam winner. Of course, I'm sure this is all just a coincidence. Moving on, another popular theme for entries was horror, and there are loads to choose from in this category as well. One such game came from Gamerlad and Gentleman with their Backrooms based game. You're given the seemingly simple task of fetching a rake from your shed, but it is not that easy because you soon find yourself confined into endless depths of shed rooms. So I thought this was a pretty interesting take, how they've mixed the backroom genre with the contest's iconic shed to give it its fun little twist and create this horror experience. There are also several different takes on a Five Nights at Freddy's sort of inspired creation, with a really good one called Wilbert's Wonderland from Askelin and Dark Age Master, who is another previous GnomeJam winner. The main game mechanic here is actually an egg hunt, but there's no time to do lally as you've got to watch out not to be murdered as you do so not quite the family-friendly egg hunt. Interestingly, the facility you make your way around actually turns out to be set in an abandoned daycare. I wonder why it was abandoned. Another good one from Yummy Mash with Spooky Shed Night. For some reason the shed has been transformed into a public toilet block. Slightly insulting what you've done with my model. But regardless, we've been tasked with guarding it, and exactly why this is happening or why I'm hanging out the window isn't clear, but the game did do a really good job of capturing that FNAF look. Although on the theme of Five Nights at Freddy's, probably the best of the bunch was A Night at the Forest Shed from Calabagaz. Once again, the shed has been transformed into an office, this time complete with a cup of coffee to keep us awake and working through the night. Though if you play this game, you're certainly not in any danger of dozing off. You've got to keep an eye on your door, window and vent for unwanted visitors, all the while keeping your generator topped up with fuel. The pacing on this I thought was done really well, and it kept me frantically checking between everything in order to stay alive. Sadly, they didn't quite finish everything in time, as there's no victory screen, which makes it a bit of a damp squib. But just making it through the night is pretty satisfying. And in fact, I was so impressed with this game, I've decided to award it the first of our runner-up prizes for this video. So congratulations to Calabagaz. Enjoy your 1000 Robux prize and bragging rights of being one of our several runners-up. Next up, let's take a look at some shooters. And here we have Defend the Shed from Jose12TR. In fact, this is almost a little bit like some of the Five Nights at Freddy's type games we've seen, with you being locked in place to the shed and only having fixed locations where you can look. Again, it keeps you pretty busy as you can only shoot in one direction at once rather than just spraying bullets everywhere and just hoping for the best. And the gnomes just keep on coming as well. So you've got your work cut out. You've got to keep an eye on your ammo and your shed health, so it's quite a challenge to survive through each wave. Another wave-based game, but this time with free movement, came from Heroic Hero 699 and guest 1212121267, who created Gnomepocalypse. This time, instead of defending the sheds, we're fighting off these terrifying gnome zombie hybrids, which are somehow directly teleporting into our sheds. We're equipped with a humble shotgun, and we have to scramble around the garden for ammunition that's helpfully laying on the lawn to keep us alive. Now, when you play through hundreds of games, you do quickly start picking up first impressions of what you think the experience is going to be like, and this can sometimes lead you to some quick judgments that can be misleading, especially with this game titled Crash and Burn from Egg Trick Site. It lures you in with a gentle puzzle before suddenly transforming into this sort of epic, Doom-inspired shoot-'em-up. This is a really fun game to play through as you desperately battle against all these surrounding hordes of zombies, goblins, gremlins, whatever they are. You don't want to hang around to find out. The only one criticism I could possibly make of this is it would have been nice to see more of the shed. There was a really good game here, but the lack of the shed ended up feeling like it had just been added in as an afterthought to sort of shoehorn it into the jam. Instead, it's really great to see when people make it the centerpiece of their creation and work their game around it. And what better example of this than the superb Gnome Assault from Ravenclaw Hermit Crab. You watch in awe as the shed suddenly transforms itself before your eyes into this foreboding weapon of mass destruction. You are charged with manning the turret on the roof and fighting off the advancing waves of gnomes. Why would you kill my brothers like this? Not only is firing the cannon and machine gun just plain awesome though, I thought it was really well brought together with its clean looking UI, upgrade shop, and enemies of increasing difficulty as well as the rounds progress. Even better though, they were kind enough to provide this handy little cheats menu. Don't mind if I do. Infinite upgrades, here we come. Once you level up the weaponry, the firepower becomes even more impressive if it wasn't already. And if you can't already tell, I am a massive fan of this game, and I'm happy to give it yet another Gnome Seal of Approval with a runner-up prize. So great work here, Ravenclaw Hermit Crab. Enjoy your 1000 Robux. And yes, even with cheating, I still died at round 9. Maybe you want to try a look and see how far you can get yourself. All the links to the game featured in this video will be down in the description, so you're more than welcome to check them out. But next up, let's take a look at some puzzle and adventure games. There's plenty of scope in this kind of genre, so it's always interesting to see what people come up with. And Shed Factory from Pan's V1 certainly did not disappoint. They've developed this entire game apparently in just one day, which is really impressive when you consider the amount of content they've packed in here. We've got this fun little story where we're working as a shed tester, which is what I could certainly relate to, and we have to work our way through escaping the facility. It's kind of like a old school puzzle escape type game. Another cool adventure game was Adventure to the Unknown by Corrupted Commander. It's a seemingly simple adventure style game on the surface with just some NPC interaction and an obby, but it has this pretty interesting turn-based combat mechanic. It gives us a range of different attack methods to choose from. We've got spells and items and so on, each of which has its own stats and animation attached, so it probably took a lot of time working all of these out, and it's come out with a pretty cool end result. Up next we have Wizard Defense from Smizzer, another adventure style game here, with loads more cool NPC interaction. For some reason we play as a plant person. Not sure what's going on here, but I really do like the design. The building work and the UI all look pretty polished, which helps gives it that professional touch. There's a few simple quests to lead us along our adventure, some enemies to fight, and there's even a simple but pretty well made combat system with a nice custom little animation, which you can always appreciate. And we've got a boss fight at the end. And they had this statue of some cool looking guy. Really, what more could I ask for? Great job on this one. Of course, if we're going to talk about story games, then it's always inherent risk that you can just bore the player with endless screens of dialogue text. And one game that I thought did an excellent job of avoiding this was The Ultimate Sacrifice from Threpod. They clearly went to a lot of effort for this one by sourcing some voice acting from none other than our server admin, Ulrond.
These devices would outgrow their own makers, causing what is now referred to today as the Shed Apocalypse.
This game is really an excellent example of showing rather than telling, with each part of the story being animated through a series of short scenes to build up the tension before we've even started the game. Always a cool way to present your game. And I can't even say the gameplay disappointed either. We got to control this giant shed mech and blast and storm our way through the barren, apocalyptic landscape they'd created. There's some really great storytelling in this game, and it makes for a great entry. Now, of course, the GnomeJam isn't just about making games. It's also open to showcase builds, people to show off what incredible 3D worlds they can create. And one such creation that ticked all the boxes for me was The Lone Shed from Spectrum GG. Before we even load in with our character, we're greeted with this really quite beautiful menu screen. It then smoothly transitions down to our character once we click play, and it really sets us up for a fantastic creation. I think it's a great example of what you can do with the lighting and you can see how they've made use of both the light and shade to bring out different details in the environment. Terrain can sometimes be difficult to work with, but the building and the terrain both blend together really nicely, and we've got this sort of upgraded shed in the centre, which you might be able to recognise as still being a natural successor to the original one. If you're wondering what happened to the old shed, we actually find it abandoned in the cave, which adds a little sort of hidden nugget for us to discover. Really outstanding work here. Our next showcase comes from Dennis Frogman 2 with their amazing garden-based build. We spawn in this homely garden shed, seemingly occupied by GnomeCode, or me. I guess it's two of us now. Plus there's this photo which presumably shows all of my many gnome brothers. We can then come out into the garden, and straight away the place feels really alive thanks to all these birds flying around in the air. And we've even got this gnome waving us over for a chat. There's a little bit of exploring you can do if you want, and there's plenty of detail to see here. But if you do go and interact with the green gnome, he gives you a shovel to then dig into the terrain, which does almost seem a shame to disturb this nice creation. But most interestingly though about this showcase, we can go and talk to the other gnome, who then lets us a voyage down the river to a nighttime version of the same location, where we then find out what happened to our yellow gnome brother. Unfortunately though, the news is grim, and I am forever haunted by this image of my poor yellow brother. I am so sorry what they did to you. But if there's one showcase we're going to appreciate, for me it has to be this creation from Struosh and I Love Soup. It's simply called Easter GnomeJam, and when you first load up the game it presents with a rather underwhelming garden path. But once you enter the shed and interact with its mysterious egg, it begins to crack, and suddenly you're transported into this immense fantasy world. The absolute scale of this build is quite incredible, and I thought it was a great idea using these panoramic shots to really highlight all the work they've done. If you look carefully at some of these village houses, you'll instantly start to recognise some of the familiar features of the original garden shed model Evan was given. This is just a kind of upgraded fantasy version. There's plenty to see and do in this world. There's NPCs to interact with, which each add a little bit of character, and the dialogue system here is pretty neat too. You can wander around and just appreciate some of the work that's gone into making this. And once again, I'm not always a big fan of terrain here, but both this and the build from Spectrum are really good examples of what can be done. And if you're concerned about your terrain build sort of looking like a cookie cutter sort of copy and paste job, I do really like how they've given it a custom look by changing the colour palette and then giving the green grass its distinctive blue colour here, which I think works really well for the fantasy setting. Overall, I really enjoyed this creation, and I'm more than happy to make it the third recipient of our run-up awards. So congratulations to the two of you. Enjoy your 1000 Robux run-up prize. Next, let's take a look at some more puzzle games. Now, we've already seen a few puzzle elements through some of the creations seen so far, but I thought these creations really took it to the next level. The first of these comes from Buzzing Builder with their island-based puzzle game. We're somewhat thrown into the deep end here with an intimidating timer counting down from the very moment we join, no pressure. We're giving a very quick little GUI to explain what to do, but we're not really given much in the way of tips or hand-holding. Instead, it's straight into it. It's a bit like a piggy-style puzzle game. We've got keys we need to find, but let me tell you, these keys are not easy to find. Everything is incredibly well hidden, and you really need to keep your eyes open if you expect to find anything here. It took me quite a while to find all the different locations, and I am sad to say I didn't manage to escape in the 20-minute time period. If you fancy something a little less intense but also challenging, then why not try out this creation from Adel Barry 11. with their time travel based shed adventure puzzle solving mystery game. Phew, what a description. I really enjoyed this submission where it sees us control our shed to various different points in time. We can then get out, interact with the environment, sort of figure out how to solve all of the various NPC's problems. But where it gets interesting is you can take things from the different ages and then transport them forwards or backwards in time to then solve the puzzles in the different environments and the different time periods. So it takes you a little bit of traveling around to get everything solved, but it starts to be pretty neat when everything comes together. I thought this was a pretty cool idea, a pretty novel one. I've not seen anyone do anything like this before. Of course, you can only really play through it the one time, but it's a pretty fun playthrough. However, the puzzle game that's taking home the glory with a runner-up prize comes from Easter Isle, by a username that's pretty much impossible for me to pronounce. Let's have a go. XXChomChai XX. Anyway, they've taken the puzzle format and successfully made it multiplayer, which can be a bit of a challenge. It's a little bit like some of the many popular story games that are already on the platform. It allows you to take up to 6 friends on a puzzle hunting adventure with you. No room for female code here.
No!
You then wander around the island, do a bit of exploring, and the building work that went into the island is pretty impressive too. It's a great example of part-based terrain building that I think can look really good when done well like this. We incurred several puzzles along our way, which thankfully are made light work of when you have some friends to help you, or maybe just exploit their labour. We then had to solve this laser-based puzzle, which looked really cool, and while I was desperately trying to figure out which orientation we'd need them all to be, suddenly I realised the puzzle had already been solved. Cheers guys! Once this was complete, all we had to do was navigate our way back through this pretty cool lava-based obstacle course, grab the key, and then make our way out into the world and open up the shed. All there was to do then was grab the fuel and make a run for it, leaving all my friends behind, forever stranded on the island. Oh wait, the boat's going without me. No, don't leave! Don't leave me here with those savages! Regardless, I thought this was another great creation. So another well-deserved runner-up here. 1,000 Robux to you, good sir. Now we'll be getting onto the winners soon. And like any GnomeJam, we've had some really fierce competition for that top spot. But before we get to the fight for the winner, let's take a look at 2 really awesome boss fight submissions. The first of these came from Alika0946 with their rather cheekily named Egg Hunter Shed. It may seem like the start of a simple egg hunt game, but things quickly flipped on their head once we found all the eggs and gleefully skipped back to the shed for our reward. But it seems the shed has other ideas, and we soon find ourselves being hunted rather than doing the hunting. Suddenly I'm being chased around the map by this crazy flame-wielding shed of death on wheels. The game does give you a rifle and a rocket launcher to deal some damage, but the shed hits you back pretty damn hard and sends you flying as well, so it's just as much of a task to stay alive. I really like how the shed destroys the environment around it, zooming around, and you can see how after a few minutes there's really nowhere left to hide at all. Especially once it evolves into its later forms and becomes even more powerful, things get pretty ruthless. Now another arguably even more impressive boss fight came from 15th Saleh and Tominus with their game Creek Hills. The game starts us off in this desolate looking field. In the centre is this rather harmless looking shed. I'm sure nothing bad could possibly be about to happen, right? Seems perfectly safe. Let's just give it a quick knock on the door anyway, and maybe I'll just back off, just to be safe, just a little bit. Definitely not because there's any threat or anything, and yeah, see, nothing to worry about, I told you. This incredible monster before us really is quite something, especially when you think of all the animation work that's gone into it. I love how the shed slowly takes this horrific humanoid form as it spouts these limbs out of the windows and doors until it suddenly starts to tower over you. I think a good boss fight should always instill some sense of fear into you as the player, and this thing is definitely downright terrifying to come up against, even though I wasn't fighting alone. It boasts a range of different attacks, including chasing, sprinting, jumping, and stomping back down, and perhaps worst of all, vomiting up this horrific liquid. Is it the blood of fallen warriors, or some strange shedological phenomenon? Either way, the stuff is toxic and you need to keep your distance. Thankfully though, the game gives us this roll mechanic which helps us navigate around, and it also allows us to just respawn back in when we die. Otherwise, I don't think we'd have had any chance of defeating the big guy. This is probably one of the most refined boss fights I've ever seen entered into one of these contests, and it's really impressive when you think what they've accomplished with both the programming to do all the different attack styles and combos and then having to animate all of it, and they've done it in just 4 days. A really impressive feat, and only really narrowly missing out on the grand prize itself. Certainly a deserved runner-up. 1,000 Robux coming your way. Great work, guys. Our tour de force of the entries continues now with a few more marvellous creations. The first of these from Dwexark with their game Stupid Sheds. If you've ever played Horrific Housing, you'll probably instantly recognise a few similarities here, to say the least. Every player starts the game on a humble base plate with their own little shed. Each round there's a random event which could be good or bad depending on your luck, and the aim is just to survive as many rounds as you can and then be the last man or perhaps last shed standing. This one was great to play with everyone on the Discord, and it's a really fun little entry. You even get to customise your shed, what's not to like? Next up we have a really strong entry from game creator 99887766 with their amazing stealth game Sneaky Gnome. Yet another impressive menu screen to get us off to a good start here. A lot to appreciate with the animation, some background effects with the cars coming and going, and the rain, and there's even this gentle camera bobbing up and down. Thankfully though, they didn't waste all their time on their menu, because there's actually a really cool game to see here too. So it's a 2D side-scroller where we have to carefully dodge these rather sinister looking Easter bunnies. I think they did a great job with the environment here, it looks really cool, and the darker lighting definitely brings out the evil glow of those rabbits. There's some pretty neat camera work here too, where instead of just having the flat camera tracking, they've mixed things up with a few different camera angles which take advantage of different scenes and obstacles to position things differently. It helps to keep things fresh, although the change in perspective can sometimes make for awkward gameplay. At least if you're trying to speedrun like the pro gamer that I definitely am. This is actually quite a tough little game, and with no checkpoints or respawns, it can get pretty ragey when you inevitably get spotted by those cursed bunnies for the upteenth time and sent right back to the start. Overall though, a really well made game here, and the only real criticism I can make of it is there seems to be a real lack of shed. You briefly see the shed at the end when you win, but it would have been nice to see it more incorporated into more of the game. But regardless, I really enjoyed this, despite me raging several times. And you may remember me saying that there's just going to be 5 runner-up slots, but for this game I think we'll have to bend the rule. This definitely deserves another gnome badge of approval. Enjoy your 1000 Robux, game creator. You definitely created a great little game here. Okay, so I've already broken my runner-up count once. Why not extend it to 7? Allow me to introduce you to Scrambled Mission from Real Awesome Place. This is another multiplayer based game where the sheds are used as a sort of teleportation lobby. You can take yourself and up to 3 friends on a mission into this strange underground shedland. Before you start, the game is nicely set up with this well presented menu screen to show you what you need to know, and then it's off into the action. I really like that they went to the effort of recording several different voice lines for this, which is a really nice touch that helps add to the experience.
We have a problem. The Egglers have taken over the place. We sent you down to take care of them before they get to the upper level. They're coming now. Be careful.
The central area with the sheds is the arena where all the action takes place. While it's pretty small, it does a really good job, I thought, of matching the general shed aesthetic of the original model, and nothing looks too bland or out of place, it just works. But before I wax on about the design, we've got enemies to fight. You soon get swarmed by these eggs that seem to be in the middle of hatching somehow, and some of them are armed with lasers while others just seem to waddle around and try and kick you. I'm not too sure whether to be scared or maybe just laugh, but you've only got 3 hearts, so I did have to be careful. Thankfully though, we can take them out just by madly clicking on them, and when you're in a team like this, they do start to drain away their health pretty quick. Each trick drops a key or item on the floor, which then have these shiny illumination effects going on, which makes them nice and easy to spot. It also just makes you want to click them. Once you pick them up, you then get access to the sheds and eventually escape. In theory. Okay, so I admit it took us 2 takes to get there, but we eventually had our success, and victory was ours. Another great game here, and I think this is actually quite possibly my favourite multiplayer game of all the GnomeJam entries this year. So it's definitely yet another deserved runner-up, and I will have to empty my wallet of yet another 1,000 Robux. So that just leaves us with one more game yet to show. Who will grab the golden gnome and the ultimate bragging rights? Who will be taking home 10,000 Robux? It's time to announce what you've all been waiting for. The winner of the Easter GnomeJam 2022 is Lelouch001. Congratulations! This one was actually a bit of a surprise winner, even to myself. By the time I got round to playing this, I'd probably already gone through around 200 odd games, and already thought I had a pretty good idea of who the winner was going to be. So when I first picked this up, I was immediately greeted by this very cheerful musical theme, and the game gently explains how to play. You get a few tools from the shed, and you start your gardening adventure. Seems like a nice, simple game so far, but nothing too exciting. There's a street outside with NPCs around, and then you discover a shop at the end where you can buy your seeds, you can plant them in the garden, give them some water, go to bed, and then you can await the next day to your fully grown plants. You can harvest them, take them back to the shop, and sell them. Awesome! There's actually quite a lot of mechanics on show here, which in itself takes quite a lot of work, but it might be a little bit bland just to be a winner. But this is where the game gets interesting. Once you've sold your crops back to the shopkeeper, your seemingly friendly tutorial style narrator reminds you of the knife you've been carrying the whole time. It turns out it's not exactly for gardening, but for a whole other type of produce harvesting. It turns out you can sneak up on the NPCs and violently attack them with a knife and then harvest a body part from them. I really did not see this coming, and it turns the whole thing on its head. Suddenly you find yourself ditching all them boring potatoes, and instead you're growing great fields of body parts, which, worryingly, the shopkeeper is still absolutely fine with buying from you. Of course, throughout all of this, you've also got to keep an eye on your sanity in the corner there, which is unsurprisingly rather stressed out by this constant cycle of killing, organ harvesting, and then somehow growing them. I don't know what we're doing here, but it's incredibly dark, but also pretty entertaining, as for every person you kill, wanted posters start to appear around town, and even the police start to show up, so there's even a little bit of roleplay and fear aspect to it. It's actually a pretty hard game, as you can easily get killed by the police or just by your own sanity. If I was to get pedantic and sort of critique, I would say some of the mechanics could maybe do with a little bit of work, as it probably takes a little too long to get through each of the days. But overall, I was really impressed with both the gameplay and the creative twist they added here. Really like nothing else I've played in this contest. I think it's definitely a deserved winner, and I'm sure they'll be looking forward to receiving their prize money. But what do you think? What was your favourite? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments as always. And thank you very much for watching. But before we go, I'd like to leave you with a special send-off. I've brought together a compilation of all the many hours of footage I've gathered over the last 2 weeks. I can't promise to have included every game here. I think it's around half of the entries, but I'll have to admit that with over 20 hours of footage here, I've lost track and I've done what I could to make this highlight reel for you. So see if you can spot your game among them. But once again, thank you so much to everyone who entered. I really love playing through all of your games, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon, though I might take a break from playing any shed-related creations for a while. But until then, I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye!